You are now locked into the Beyond the Hashtag podcast.
BTHPOD. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Beyond the Hashtag episode. We are here with your host, myself, Stevie Adu, Stevo, whatever you want to call me. That's me. I'm here, and I'm here with another very special guest. We've been planning this podcast for quite a while. This collaboration piece. Ideally, would have had a few more people on, but circumstances, life plays a part. But we've managed to grip one of the infamous Arseholics and bring them onto the show. So I'd love to introduce Raj this evening.
Mate, thank you. It's a privilege, but you got the best one out of that group.
Absolutely.
So that's the main thing. Quality rather than quantity. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really glad that we can make it happen. And just, I suppose the irony is that we've been trying to plan this for a long time, and so long such that the podcast is now on a hiatus and we haven't recorded an episode of the Arseholics for such a long time. But when we were talking about doing this pod, we were really, really active. So so apologies of letting you down in that respect. But yeah, thank you for having me, mate.
No, it's all good. And yeah, regardless of like how frequent or infrequent the pods are, like you guys are firstly like friends of Beyond the Hashtag, and secondly like really like prevalent people, I would say, like in the I guess even the Arsenal football scene, and people that I generally hold a lot of respect for, like your opinions and just what you've been able to create in your podcast. And I'm a genuine, authentic fan of your podcast before anything else relates to any kind of collaboration. So that's one of the main reasons why I've been like desperate to have you guys on this show as well. So.
It's like the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Steve.
Married with 1/2 kids on the way. So
well, exactly. She's none of them have said anything nice. Not like that anyway. But no, I appreciate it. And likewise, mate. I mean, the fact that I'm like getting to be on an award-winning podcast is amazing for me. Like honestly, it's a real privilege to be here, and the work that you do specifically in driving this podcast and the themes that the podcast is all about is just phenomenal. And it's just there's probably not enough exposure to the stuff that you address and the stuff that you champion. But that being said, I think it's gone leaps and bounds over the years because of the work of people like you. So well done, mate. And of course, with regards to Arsenal, absolutely back at you. You are a top fan whose opinion is always worth listening to. So look forward to maybe talking a bit about Arsenal despite our rubbish weekend. This weekend losing to Bournemouth and everyone else winning, but anyway.
No, indeed. And yeah, we all the keen football fans, we will get into a bit more of like specific like football chat later with Raj. And I guess just for a bit of context as well, for those who don't know, Arseholics, you guys were originally a group of 4. I want to say largely got into a group of 3 in the last maybe like couple of years or so. With Mr. Nero flying around the world or whatever Nero does with himself. But yeah, essentially like 4 Asian Arsenal fans who came together, and you guys are all attending games already, right? And you just decided to bring the conversations that you have on a natural basis to the screens, right? Like there's more to it than that.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, that was it, mate. To be honest, there was never like this real plan of starting a podcast. It was actually a void during the COVID season. Started recording it. Wouldn't that be fun? And just see what happens. And so really, more than putting out the content, it was just an opportunity for us to actually just chat in the way that we weren't being able to do because of COVID. And then we just carried on through. So, the ultimate aim of the podcast was never necessarily to kind of grow exponentially and do all the various things that you need to grow. It was kind of, let's put a mic to our conversations, and anyone who wants to tune in can tune in. The fact that we are all South Asian, I remember there was a point when, towards the beginning of the pod, we were like, I wonder if this pod really blows up in India or Sri Lanka or Pakistan. Do you know what I mean? Just because, they see a bunch of brown guys doing a podcast about Arsenal and maybe they relate, maybe they connect. That never actually happened. Disappointingly, we never blew up in any of those countries. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because the content was rubbish, but who knows? But yeah, no, like that's that. You got the genesis of the podcast pretty much, otherwise spot on. And yeah, it's been 3 of us for a pretty long time for various reasons. And it was something that we were trying to do every week. Usually on a Sunday night, we'd record, and unfortunately, life gets in the way sometimes, and all three of us have got jobs, young families, and it's just been tougher over the last 6 months for various reasons to sort of get on that regular basis. So we're on a little bit of a break right now. I don't know if that break will be forever. It might, but it might not. We'll see.
No, good. And yeah, I would highly recommend, whether you guys make your return sooner rather than later, or even just people want to listen back to some previous ones. And I know Mice does a lot of bits on TikTok, and you have your fair share on Twitter of content, and just you're just regular match going fans. But the way, I think the uniqueness and the authenticity of how you guys tell your kind of match day stories, I think is what initially drew me to you, and sort of stuck around as a subscriber, because it's the genuine real football fan experience. And I think seeing it through those lenses is one that I would highly recommend to any of our supporters here on Beyond the Hashtag. So I'll put all your links and stuff in the description as per usual. I think that's the way YouTube collabs kind of normally work and things like this. So it's yeah,
nice. I appreciate that. Hey, and if we get this big reaction from it, then that might spur us to start recording again. But yeah, a little bit tricky for me, as sort of you pointed out. I've got a baby coming in December, so be a bit mental for me. But hey, maybe the other two can sort themselves out and do some kind of one-on-one conversations. But yeah, cool, mate.
No, agreed. And just, I mean, on the topic of Arsenal and backgrounds, I guess, Beyond the Hashtag supporters who I guess follow me on socials will know, or if you haven't already guessed, I am a big Arsenal fan, big Gooner. I guess for yourself, Raj, what's the thing that made you become the Arsenal fan that you are today? What kind of got you into supporting Arsenal, or maybe even just football in general?
Actually, the bit that you said on the end is really relevant there, football in general, because I actually think I probably became an Arsenal fan before I really became a football fan, if that makes any sense. And I don't know if you relate to some of this, because it'd be really interesting to hear your story as well, mate. But my parents came to this country from Sri Lanka, and so they weren't football fans coming in, and I was born therefore as a first generation football fan. And I think a lot of first generation football fans end up having some sort of weird and wonderful reasons for who they support, you know what I mean, because it's not from your dad or your mum. And my mum was a childminder, so because we lived really close to my primary school, and this kid that she used to look after was a big Arsenal fan, basically. So I was about 4 or 5 years old at this time. This kid, all he wanted to talk about was Arsenal, and he always had the kits. And at this point, I really don't even understand the rules of football properly, But Arsenal were just this thing, and then kind of around the same time, my school got free tickets to a Wimbledon football match, which was at Selhurst Park, because Wimbledon used to play at Selhurst Park, right? And I went to this game. And again, I don't really know anything about football at this point, but there was posters of a Crystal Palace player called Ian Wright. And around that time, so I saw this poster, I recognized that name. And then very soon after that, he transferred to Arsenal. And I remember seeing this on CFAX or whatever it was. So all of this stuff happened at around the same time, my friend being an Arsenal fan, this Ian Wright thing. So I think that's where it started, to be honest, mate. And then the thing that I think cemented it was, I remember this conversation at primary school where there were lots of Man United fans at that time, because obviously, Man United are sort of coming up around that time. And I remember one kid who was an Arsenal fan saying to the guy supporting Man United, he said, "Well, you're not even from Manchester. Why do you support Man United?" And I remember, even at the age of 5 or 6, I remember that sort of made sense to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, actually, I'm from London. Maybe I support the London one. And in my head, that was just Arsenal. So, yeah, that was my story. I mean, do you relate to any of that? I mean, particularly I think the point about weird and wonderful reasons when you're a first generation fan. This being said, I'm making an assumption there. I don't know, were your parents immigrants to this country, or what was the deal?
Yeah, I think for myself, and I think a lot of maybe ethnic minority kind of UK citizens, I guess, in this country can relate to maybe not having that like father figure, or mainly father figure, but parental figure who like took you to football or like got you into football, but you kind of through school or through other means kind of found your way into the games. I think for myself it was like friends, maybe older cousins, who were all just like big on Arsenal. And I think the point you mentioned about righties, so like having that prominent like figure, especially of colour, let's say, who like was there to kind of lead the charge and become a bit of a superhero, not even just a regular hero in that sense. So I think for without being age discriminatory here, your generation was Ian Wright, mine was Thierry Henry, but similar reasons, similar.
Forgot you're so much younger than me. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you, mate.
But anyway, love Righty. Like, had the privilege of meeting him a couple of times as well. So yeah, very much a big hero of mine, especially with everything I do with Beyond the Hashtag. But it was similar to you in school. Ironically, and only maybe a handful of people know this, but I want to say I started off being a Man United fan.
Oh my, wow. This is coming out.
Simply because of David Beckham. And that's like, I think everyone can give me a bit of a blight because he was like, I was getting into football. Who's the biggest footballer in the early 2000s? David Beckham, probably even one of the biggest celebrities, David Beckham, with the hair and everything. And it was like, okay, yeah, he plays for Man United. So and the reason why I said fan is because I'm a David Beckham fan. I'm a Man United fan for maybe like a year or two. And then I started to understand this game of football and actually understand what it meant to know football, to play football, to actually understand. So when I become a knowledgeable football supporter is when...
Okay, there we go.
Is when I was like, there's this team that plays in red and white. They play in London. They got loads of black players as well, which I didn't think of at the time, but I think subconsciously, maybe when you're like looking at on a TV screen, and then loads of my cousins were like fans of them as well. And then I was like, this is a team that I can kind of resonate with and maybe leave the singular David Beckham behind and maybe appreciate him from one side, but actually resonate with like the whole team, which is Arsenal. And then I think properly got into them in the 02-03 season, so started to feel the heartbreak before I even kind of realized, because obviously that was the year that we lost the league to Man United. But then got into proper like hard watching every game during the Invincible season, funnily enough. So that was like my first like platform into being like the goon I probably am today. So.
No, that is brilliant. I mean, there is that commonality of theme there, right, around kind of first generation fan. But it was interesting hearing you talk about that time period, right? Because I'm reflecting on how old I was when those things were going on, and I was a little bit older than you, but I still feel that I didn't appreciate it enough. Like we've gone through some barren years for a little while, and I don't think I really appreciated that Invincible kind of era, that Latvinger era. I don't know how you feel about that, but one day we'll be back.
Yeah, I know. Well, it might be sooner rather than later, but anyway, we'll see how that goes. But I think that even that point of like not like the way we kind of like fell into football, because I think, and it's a point that I touched on maybe on a few previous episodes or read some articles of where like your typical like white football fan who would have had a dad or granddad who've like passed over the football theme and football love to them through generations. And I think especially with the match going fans, like, you've got season tickets that get passed down through generations. So that's your entry point into football from a very young age. But maybe for like a lot of ethnic minority or migrants who like come into this country, and first of all, their first thought in their mind is, money and stability and these things. But then you develop the love for football and you think, okay, but then like, how do I then become a match going fan, or how do I then have that engagement with my team? But a lot of us have had to figure it out for ourselves, and actually think, okay, where do I fit into all of this? How can I can afford this, but what avenues do I go and get it? And these kind of things. I personally felt like I've had to do a lot of figuring it out, and I've managed to, weave my way into the Arsenal system, and then actually start to have the thought process to think, I've got like nephews and like a godson specifically who like I really want to try and get into like Arsenal supporting in general. So got them a membership and like, starting to see where I can bring them to games and stuff, because knowing that they're at that age where when they do reach my age, they'll appreciate someone having done that for them, because I didn't actually get that to be done for me. But I'm not sure how it was for you to then be able to like get into the whole football system that way.
Well, I wanted to actually ask something on what you said right before.
Yeah.
So did your parents like football? And if not, how did they feel about you getting into football?
My mum was like like a lot of moms just didn't really care as long as I was happy doing whatever.
Mm.
I grew up I grew up with mum being a single mom, but then when my stepdad came into the picture, he was big on football, but not in the football scene. So basically, almost like an armchair fan, but he was quite a passionate Chelsea fan, but like more armchair. Like he'd never go to games, but we'd always talk football and all that kind of stuff. So like anything I was doing to do football, he'd like be appreciative of and supportive of, but nothing that was like direct to be like, this is your gateway into Arsenal. I still had to figure it out myself.
Right, right. The reason I ask that is sort of relevant to, I think, sort of the South Asian element of myself and maybe the experience of a South Asian fan. So my dad wasn't overly keen about me getting into football, right? He wasn't, and I think that stems from, he came to this country in 1970s, so literally 1970 he came, and around that time I think there was a little bit more racism around that time, right? And he still, has memories of feeling that racism, that sort of overt racism, and being chased down the street. Like, not, it wasn't, I don't think this was something that happened every day, but it did happen. And there was still, whether he was experiencing or not, the skinhead violence that was kind of going around at the time, etc. And a lot of that was associated with football, right? And there was some connectivity between the two, if you like, right? So my dad always had it in his mind that football was a sport that was kind of associated with rough people,
hooligans and all this. Yeah,
exactly. And I think part of, I think the sort of immigrant story to some degree is, you get people who they come from wherever it is, whether it's Sri Lanka in my parents' case, elsewhere, and they want their kids to have better than they did.
Yeah,
and that was important for my parents. So with my dad, it was sort of back in that era where, but they didn't make that much money. But back in the sort of late 80s, 90s, you could, if you had one like person in a couple who had a professional job, maybe earning 30, 40K, that was enough to own a nice house and send your kid to private school, which is just like batshit if you think about it, right? So my dad's whole thing was, I almost want him to be away from any of that kind of environment, that kind of hooligan type-esque environment, anything that, maybe could cause him harm or whatever. And I think he associated football into that. So it didn't really wasn't like prohibitive, but was never really pushing the football agenda. This being said, he ended up being like really validated, because my first Arsenal game was away at Chelsea, and which sounds really odd, but what it was he had promised to take me to a game, and he said, like, this season we'll go, like he promised. And it was the last day of the season. It was Chelsea away, and I went again on CFAX, right? And back in the days on CFAX, it would tell you if there were tickets left for a game or not. And so on that day, I said, "Oh, Dad, there's tickets available for Chelsea Arsenal." And he was just like, "Oh no, like it was a couple of hours before kickoff or whatever." And he was like, "Oh no," and he made some excuse or whatever. I started crying. And I was like, "Oh, it's the last game of the season. You promised." And, I was really, really upset. And then he was, I think in his mind, he was like, "Hey, do you know what? I did promise, and it is the last game of the season." And Chelsea wasn't that far from us, actually, right? Because we live in Southwest London. So but again, he's naivety, right? So he's got, all right, fine, there's tickets available. Let's go. We drove, parked up. Now I've got the Arsenal away kit at this point, and this is important because it's a blue kit. So I've got the blue kit on, but I've got, something zipped up. Like, I don't think my dad realized that, you're not really supposed to, like, Arsenal fans aren't supposed to sit in the Chelsea end and vice versa and all that stuff. That's not a thing, right? Like, right. So we've got tickets in the Chelsea, in like a normal Chelsea end. Luckily, obviously, I've got the kit is blue and zipped up. So even the little bit that you can see, probably no one really cared. The bit that he's validated was literally, I remember, there's not many things I remember from that game. I think we lost 2-1. There were 3 things I remember. One was, it was around that time when, we had just lost the Cup Winners' Cup final when Naeem from the halfway line. So I remember the Chelsea fans doing that to David Seaman, like flapping. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that I missed our goal because someone walked in front of me. And the other thing I remember, which was my dad's validation, was that there were 2 guys sitting behind us, and every other word was a swear word. right? Every other word was a swear word. Now, in retrospect, I look at that and they were probably just two normal guys having a normal football chat, nothing like offensive. They weren't being outboard, but every other word is a swear word. And my dad, who sent me to this private school, has, this is his worst nightmare, right? He's like, this is why I never wanted you, child, to get into football. This is what football people are like. Do you know what I mean? But funnily enough, mate, like, when I grew into like just then being more and more into Arsenal, funnily enough, like he ended up getting more and more into Arsenal. And now he's at that point. Yeah, mate, now he's at that point where if it's a nervous part of a game, he can't watch. He'll turn it off and watch something else. He's too nervous. Too nervous to watch. It's crazy how these things go, right? But
has he become like that through you, or like has he like developed his own like love for football and that?
Well, it's definitely through me, but he will now, like, independent. I don't live with my parents, and he will have all the fixtures and, be looking at when Arsenal's playing and watching all the games and, well, unless he's nervous, in which case he won't. So there is that genuine kind of interest that I think has kind of developed over the years. And I think as well, he's probably seen that, football has changed and the demographics of the people who go have changed. The behavior of people has changed. Hooliganism isn't really a thing. Like, it's not really a thing anymore, right? Like, there's violence every now and again, but hooliganism as a pervasive thing isn't a UK or a Premier League issue anyway. And I think he gets that. And obviously with the Premier League being what it is and the, the kind of all the pizzazz and all the Sky Sports and all that kind of stuff, I think, the image has changed. So I think he's okay. He's definitely okay now. He's had to be, given, how much I loved Arsenal and ended up being a season ticket holder. So,
but yeah, no, I can definitely resonate with the chat about kind of parents, kind of feeling that burden that you might carry as well with especially with what Arsenal put us through. I think as much as my mum just wouldn't, I don't think we'll ever like fully get into football, but she's always checking for what Arsenal were doing, or is always like, if Arsenal are happy, you can tell like it brightens up her mood, because then I'm also happy, like, naturally. But then sometimes I have this weird, I'll not be overly excited by an Arsenal result, and it's almost like she's happier than I am, but I'm just like, like, I don't know, beating Southampton 2-0 when we've just chucked away maybe 3 points the weekend before. I'm kind of like, we've won, but like there's a bigger picture to this kind of thing. So.
And just like your mum, when your mum sees like a team like Arsenal, who, like you mentioned, like there's a history of a lot of black representation, but still to this day, does she feel a lot of pride around that at all? Has she ever articulated that to you?
No, not necessarily, but I think, to be fair, with me, maybe personally, that I guess with everything I'm doing with Beyond the Hashtag, I think that's where like maybe the combination of those things and like speaking about these things and highlighting them is where like that level of pride maybe comes from, and the knowledge that I kind of share from a personal perspective. But maybe I'd be intrigued to see or know how like that kind of thing affects like other like football families, or maybe even non-football families, but who have like the casual parents and who are like, oh yeah, Arsenal's cool, but like, do you know like this amount of impact? And even speaking about Arsenal and kind of our black UK people, but like the Black Arsenal book that got released kind of earlier this year in 2024, and the impact like that's had on the history of black players. And like, I'd be really keen to read and maybe do a bit of a review on that as well, just to like really hone in on like that impact that Arsenal have had in the black community.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It is palpable, isn't it? And that's the thing, when I've got one of my colleagues at work, for example, and her descent is from Jamaica, and she's a Crystal Palace fan because kind of they're around Palace. But she always says that all of her family who either are Palace fans or kind of whoever they support, it's always like Arsenal always is second team because of that history. And all those players that I think they really feel this affiliation towards, kind of, back at a time where perhaps that representation wasn't so high, but
no, exactly that. And I think even regardless of like race, it's always felt like Arsenal have that connection with some kind of culture, especially in like the London scene, and it just always feels like Arsenal have that going on for them. And I think I've heard those kind of comments from like other fans of other football teams, like Arsenal just get it sometimes when it comes. We'll trip up every now and again, like what other club doesn't, but I think more than most, I think Arsenal just have that resonation. I don't know if you have seen or feel the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's It's a bit different, like, from a South Asian perspective. Like, we don't really have that connection to any club, right? There's nothing where you point to and go like, that's the because it's quite funny because I live in the town I live in is called New Malden. I don't know if you know, but like it's in southwest London. Yeah, and so the really interesting thing here, for example, is that there's a huge Korean population, right? It's got there's some crazy statistics. So it's something ridiculous like we have the highest populations of Koreans in any town outside of Korea. We have the highest population of North Koreans in the Western, like, hemisphere, if you want to call it that. It's like crazy. There's like lots of articles written about it. But the reason why I bring that up is huge Tottenham support here. Because as you can imagine, the reason why, right? So it's you do, it's a way, like, people get brought in that way, right? Just demographics and communities get brought in that way. So as I'm sure that, like, from Arsenal having people like Tomiyasu, for example, I'm sure that we've gained a lot of Japanese fans. But when it comes to South Asians, it's not that many. Although there is a kid who just played for Barnsley recently, a Sri Lankan Tamil kid, who plays for Barnsley, and he played against Man United in the League Cup. So that was pretty cool. I think, from my perspective, actually seeing someone who has a surname that is similarly as long and Sri Lankan as mine, and as brown as me, that's pretty cool. So, who knows, maybe that'll happen more in the future.
Yeah, that's always been, and we'll kind of segue more into specifically around South Asians in British football, because that's always been something for me that I've always like scratched my head at, like why there is such a gap with in kind of all aspects. So players, managers, referees, coaches, wherever. Like there's always been that massive gap, and it's always like it's puzzled me. I know inherently the reasons why, and it'd be good to hear from you directly. But I think because I've grown up like in East London, where there's just a ton of South Asians, and like I've been able to experience the cultures, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, like, Sri Lankans, like just the full picture. I've kind of had that experience, and I've grown up with guys who are like some of the best footballers that I've seen, like regardless of race, but like genuinely from a South Asian background. So I'm thinking, how have you not managed to make it into the game, or if that small circle that I'm looking at is replicated around London, like how at least not a handful been able to really like make it and push on into the professional game and be on the same level as the stars we see today. So it's always been one that's like made me scratch my head. But yeah, I don't know from your perspective, like growing up, on like whether that's from a fan perspective or like actually looking into the player side of things, how the South Asian football fan experience has kind of been.
It's a really interesting one because I think that you could look at it quite simplistically in some respects and be like, well, immigrant population, generally speaking, most of the people from South Asia came sort of in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, around that period of time, right? So they come and want their kids to do academic things because, there is opportunity and to get good jobs and whatever, and maybe putting your child down a career path in football is not the right or not the right thing to do, but you know what I mean, something that you think is too big a risk and all that. A good example for you, right, is, I don't know if I've ever told you the story before. So my driving instructor when I was like 18 years old, his son was a guy called Zesh Rayman, and I don't know if you remember this.
That rings a bell.
Yeah. So Zesh Rayman was, I believe, the first South Asian player to play in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He basically, so Zesh played for Fulham. He came through Fulham's academy, and at one point, like, broke into the team as this kid is going to be, our kind of mainstay as centre back, like really, really good. And so just before he had broken in, I was learning how to drive, and his dad was my driving instructor. And he had a really interesting story, right? Like, so he had a few kids, I think quite a few, like I think like anything between 5 and 7, I think. And yeah, like quite a lot of kids. And I think his eldest son also played for Bradford or something like this. So clearly there was something kind of sporty related, right? And he told me, he goes, the reason why he was really supportive of his kids playing football and almost like pushed them, that was, he goes, when he was a kid, his dad had a shop and he worked in his dad's shop. And, when he was, I don't know, 15, 16, whatever, and he was quite good at cricket. and he was playing at school, and then Warwickshire, as he lived around that area, Warwickshire asked him to come for a trial. So he was like, oh my God, like, I get a trial at a county. This is amazing, whatever. And he went home and he told his dad, he was like, oh, Dad, Warwickshire want me to come on trial. And his dad was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, well done. Congratulations. And then his dad goes, oh, when is it? And then he said, oh, it's on Saturday. And he goes, oh, no, you can't. You have to work. And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're working on Saturday. That's when your shift, you're working on Saturday. He's like, yeah, but Dad, like, I've got like a trial at Warwickshire. And he goes, no, that's not that important. It's not more important than, and he was like, oh, he was like, that experience affected him so much. He sort of felt like if he ever had children, that he would really want them to pursue their passions, their dreams. And, if it was sport, then he would want that even more because of that experience. So I think when his kids started showing some desire in football, there was this real kind of rebellion against what, he had faced. Now, I think that he was I think what you saw in that behavior, you'll see now more, right? Because I think my generation, there's lots of people who probably have had a similar story and will have a similar reaction. I think he was almost a generation early, if you know what I mean. Like, but I think basically, that his experience is, I think, pretty true. I think that there are a lot of South Asian kids who are probably quite good at football. And I think their parents were just never like willing to put in the time that's required to actually make it as a footballer. You know what? It seems like for a footballer to make it these days, you've got to be just super focused on football, right? It's got to be your life, and everything is around football. And unfortunately, I think in the way that football is structured in the UK, at least, but I imagine in most of Europe, football and formal education aren't incredibly entwined.
Yeah, no.
And if you look at it, it's interesting, right? Because this is why like rugby of cricket end up being really middle class games, because rugby and cricket are very symbiotically woven into the education system. So top unis have top rugby and top cricket teams.
Yeah. So
you go get a top degree while playing top level cricket and top level rugby. And then if you are good enough, you can then go play professional cricket. There is no such pathway in football. No such pathway exists, right?
It's extremes, right? Like it's like you
extremes.
Become a professional footballer and with no GCSEs, or you get the top uni degree, but you fall away from football. Like it's one of the two.
Well, it's the compatibility of progressing, because it's like Saka is a really good example. From everything I understand, he's a really smart, intelligent kid who did really well in his GCSEs, for example. Now, there is no compatibility after that to carry on his formal education whilst progressing as an elite footballer. There's no way that works, right? So I think a lot of, I imagine, South Asian parents probably just looked at that and were like, well, come on, 0.01% or whatever make it as elite footballers, right? So maybe they hadn't thought about it this mathematically, but essentially the essence is, well, what's going to happen? Even if he's really good at football, he's probably not going to make it. Then what?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? So,
Yeah, nice. It's interesting. And the parallels do exist with, I guess, with like both communities that we're talking about, like South Asian and the Black community. I think obviously because I think like the Black community have seen like more people like kind of make it. So of course there's more examples for their parents to have like the leeway to say, okay, well, if you've got tons of stars, so you could actually genuinely be one of those stars, or maybe even not even hit the heights of the Premier League, but still get a good career. But yeah, there just hasn't been that kind of breakthrough of like flurry of like South Asian heritage stars to then be like, oh yeah, like of course, like, this is the thing.
Well, Stevie, though, I actually was a Premier League footballer for about 5 or 6 hours.
I thought you were going to say minutes, so that's impressive.
Approximately 5 or 6 hours. I was genuinely a Premier League footballer, and it's like one of these stories that I will dine out on. I was with some friends in Stockholm in a nightclub around 2010, around that time, and obviously this is before social media, and so you could like probably get away with this stuff, but Blackburn Rovers were managed by Sam Allardyce.
Yeah.
Sam Allardyce, I don't know if you remember, you'd probably be too young.
No, I've got good nostalgia memories, so test me. Yeah.
Okay. So he at one point had a heart condition, whatever, and he was having he had basically some operation. So essentially what happened was Blackburn had played Liverpool, I think, that weekend, and Sam Allardyce wasn't at the game, and he wasn't and he was in hospital or whatever. And it was in December. So basically what the Blackburn players had done, they'd gone like, well, obviously the manager's not around, manager's in hospital. They had arranged essentially a Christmas party in Stockholm.
Wow.
So they flew after the game, and they flew into Stockholm with just like a massive bender. Obviously, back in the days when probably not worried about like the paps and all that kind of stuff, right? So here, me and my mates are in this random club in Stockholm, and suddenly there's a sign saying like Blackburn Rovers, like a section, so Blackburn Rovers, and we're like, what the hell's going on there?
Hmm.
And basically, obviously, like we then here, we're like, well, okay, actually, like apparently the Blackburn Rovers football team are actually here. So we're like, do you know what? We're from England. We've got English accents, yeah. So we walked up to the sort of like there's like curtains. So we walk up to these curtains, and it's two bouncers, and bouncers sort of stop us. And then I literally said, "Oh yeah, Blackburn Rovers Football Club, mate." And he was like, "Yeah." And then so we went in, and walked in, and the first person that I see is Jason Roberts.
Yeah.
And Jason Roberts is there, and Mort Gamps Pedersen,
Oh.
he's there.
Wow.
Yeah, those two were the first two people saw. And like basically it was like the Blackburn team and then like 80 women basically, yeah. And like literally it was like bizarre. And these guys were like, who the hell are you?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we were like, oh mate, listen, we're from London. We sort of said Blackburn, we're not going to cause any harm, like whatever. I mean, it's just amazing. We're huge football fans, whatever. And then I remember like the bouncer clearly was like, something's going on here.
Yeah,
The bouncer came over, and I was like, oh no, I'm with them. And then they were like, oh, okay, yeah, they're from London, it's okay. So they let us stay, right? So obviously, like me and my mate, so the Blackburn Rovers team know that we're not them, but no one else knows that we're not them. Yeah. Yeah, right. So for that evening, I was a Mexican footballer called Lucas Miguel. But there is something, Lucas Miguel. And there is something in there, though, around this kind of connecting back to this story. I obviously couldn't say like my actual name or an Asian name because it would have been completely unbelievable. South Asian. I had to say a Mexican name. So it was like 5-6 hours of that, and it was really fun, man. Like that time, those guys, Benny McCarthy, Mikel Salgado, Paul Robinson, Christopher Samba, El Hadj Diouf
was there, yeah.
all that crowd, mate. It was some really funny moments.
Yakubu already? Was it Yakubu?
Was that, sorry?
Yakubu, was he there? You say more? Yakubu
wasn't there that time. Well, he wasn't there. I remember there was a guy who was on loan from Chelsea, and he was a young South American guy, and he wasn't very good. I can't remember his name now. But like one of the funny things was I said to Benny McCarthy, I was like, Benny, it's a real honor meeting a Champions League winner. And Mikel Salgado was behind him, and Mikel Salgado just went, I've won it twice.
There's levels.
Really funny.
There's levels.
Yeah, there's levels. There's that levels. There's
that's a funny story. Good times. Thank you for that. And just like linking back again to the South Asian fan experience and that point you mentioned about, like wouldn't it be a believable kind of lie to have spun? I guess getting into more of like your fan experience, where you are now as like a season ticket holder Arsenal fan, like I guess how's that experience been like in the last how long you been a season ticket holder for?
Well, the season was when we sold Van Persie. So I can't think of the year of that now, but it was Podolski.
I'll never forget.
Sorry?
2012 going into 2013. So yeah.
Okay. Wow. Great memory. Yeah. So it was then. Yeah. My first game as a season ticket holder was the first game of that new season with the Podolski, Carzola, Giroud summer that was. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been like just over 12 years now. So I guess how like being like a regular match going fan, but then from an Asia perspective, like how do you think your experience has been shaped? Like I guess linking to your ethnicity and the fact that like you've got quite a unique experience where like you can experience football without necessarily seeing like idols that look like you on the pitch, but actually maybe have the full perspective of like just seeing like everything. But how's it been for you? I guess in the last like 12 years specifically.
I think it's interesting, Stevie, because I think as you sort of correctly point out, never seen that representation, but it was never a problem for me, right? Because it was just not, it wasn't like, I don't think as a kid and even growing up, I felt like South Asians weren't playing football because they weren't being let in. Like, as in, you know, there's the kind of supply and demand issue here, right?
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the supply issue as to why people come through. I never felt it was a case where we've been systemically prevented by, you know, these football clubs from being footballers. I always felt like it was a choice almost of, you know, whatever. So like I never had that feeling inside me that I wasn't welcome. And I think that we're really lucky to support a club who, you know, is very welcoming and it is very diverse. And you know, I've always felt that, you know, I've been accepted at Arsenal. I've not even had to think about the color of my skin at Arsenal at any point, or, you know, whatever. I mean, that being said, like, I think things have probably just changed quite rapidly as well over the years. Like, because I do remember the one thing I remember is I remember being at a game, an Arsenal game, and I think I was probably about 14 at the time, 14, 15, maybe a little bit younger. Anyway, and I remember a chant that the Arsenal fans were singing, saying, "I'd rather have a curry than a bagel." Right. And they're singing this over. Yeah, exactly. And at the time it was really funny, like, because I at the time was like, oh my God, that's wicked. That's saying curry. Like, that's really cool. Like, yeah, they like curries. They're like, I know, that's awesome, whatever. As opposed to, like, perhaps, like, you know, as I got older and reflect, I was like, that's a pretty shitty, like, chant to sing, right? It's like it's like saying, like, oh, these two bad things, I prefer this one, right? It's like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you would never hear something like that now at Arsenal, right? You would never. And I remember, like, there was another comment when I was around the same time, and I was at a game when there were another two of my friends, and they were both Asian guys. And I don't even know why this was funny or an interesting thing to say, but I remember, like, one guy, like, turning around to us going, "Oh, look, it's the sons of Kanu." And yeah, it was, I mean, like, I was really odd. I didn't think at the time this was racist. Like, I didn't think of it. Like, I didn't feel like I was in danger or like this was out. Well, I was just like, what a random thing to say. Like, whatever. Okay, cool. But, you know, even like comments like that, you wouldn't really hear. So, you know, I guess to answer your question, I'm not sure how much it shaped my experience as an Arsenal fan, aside from, in a very positive way, feeling that, you know, when you see some scenes that are played out at other clubs, perhaps, like, and, you know, my mind always goes back to the incident of Chelsea fans on that tube when they were pushing away that black.
Oh no,
but
no, sorry, it was Chelsea, their own. Yeah,
their own. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was their own or whatever. But it was the whole, like, you know, we're racist, and that's the way we like it. That whole thing, and you know, like, that is awful. That is awful, right?
Yeah.
Awful. And I think that whether you were black, brown, etc., you felt that and go, well, that could have been, you know, that had nothing to do with the fact they were black. It's just that they're not white, right? Like, that's how it is. And it's, you know, I remember even at the time, you know, when I saw that, I was like, well, that would never happen at Arsenal. The Arsenal fans would never do that. Like, you know, so I think there's an element that I think I've attached myself to Arsenal as well in this story of feeling just incredibly kind of normalized and included, and, you know, never had my race. Feel like it shaped that experience, apart from in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
What about you? Like, do you have a similar?
Yeah, I think for myself, and thank you for also sharing your experiences as well. And I think, yeah, for myself, it's just like, I thought more about race because it's become like a quite high level like topic, and like quite a prevalent topic in especially football being intertwined. But I think it's always been maybe an undertone. So even I remember specifically like 2004, 2005 at Highbury when we played against Man United, and it was specifically a kick it out for racism game. And I think it was the game that we lost 4-2, but I remember the whole game was being branded like kick it out, kick racism out. So I was like, from then I started to see like the undertones of like racism in football, or equally anti-discrimination within football. But I think, yeah, as a black fan, I think it's just been pretty, like, as you say, you resonate with the club and you resonate with everything the club is kind of doing. And then it's only when you get those like minor incidents and you think, actually, like, what's that kind of about, or what's that kind of to do with? Is that to do with like me specifically? Is it to do with the club? Is it to do with something else that's kind of wider? But like you said, for Arsenal, like on the whole, it's few and far between. definitely not to say that we're absolved of anything, because there's incidents that you see flying around. So no club is absolutely perfect, but I think on the grand scheme of things, like reputation wise, Arsenal's definitely on the lower end of on the higher end of inclusivity and acceptance, and on the lower end of like those kind of flare up incidents. So yeah, pretty positive as well.
Is that a similar take? Do you have a similar take on your relationship then with the England national team? So do you feel as kind of connected to it for the same reasons that you've mentioned, or is there any difference?
That is a very, very good question. I think I've been on a bit of a roller coaster with England national team. I think like it's always been a team that I've resonated with because I consider myself like English and British because I have a British passport. I've born and raised in London, so like I consider myself black British essentially. Of course, I've got like strong Ghanaian heritage roots, and I'm someone who's fortunate enough to be able to go back and like resonate with those roots, so I can feel a bit of dual nationality within myself. But inherently, yeah, being born and raised in England, like if I'm looking for an international team to kind of pledge my allegiances to, originally it was England until, to be fair, Ghana started like playing in World Cups and like started at some points to be doing better than England. And I was like, hang on a minute. Like, yeah, there's a bit more to this. And I guess I have a strong affiliation now to the come up of African football. But then I think when you look at the connotation sometimes behind the England team and thinking like how accepted like ethnic minorities are, and especially black players, where it's like okay, when you're doing well, like yeah, we love you, like you're English, etc. And then when 3 black players are missing penalties and you're seeing all of that, you're thinking okay, well, is there something deeper behind it? So but I personally, I have no issues like supporting England as a black man. I have England tops when England play in the Euros or the World Cup. Like I'm there with my mates, like watching it, like feeling proud, like going mental when Cole Palmer scores an equalizer in the Euros final. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm all part of that, but I still have that bit of a conscious outlook to be like, okay, like it's is there something potentially undertone lurking? Like, is there something for me to be aware of? Like, and I try to like maybe block it out and see the good and maybe give things the benefit of the doubt. But if things were to ever like turn left, I wouldn't sit here and be like, oh my gosh, I'm shocked, and I'm like, that things have like gone in a particular way. So yeah, I don't know about yourself, how that resonates.
Yeah, it does resonate, particularly the whole point around, when things are good, you're kind of you're accepted, and then when they're not, and I know it's not quite the same because obviously there aren't Asian players who are playing for England, but I think even as a fan, I actually feel that. So my journey with England's been similar. It's been a bit up and down. I think as a kid, I was really into England, and I remember being heartbroken when Gareth Southgate missed that penalty in Euro '96. That was like it was really heartbreaking, and so I clearly felt a strong affinity. But that started going when I was a bit later on, because I started feeling, I think, a little bit more like many England fans probably didn't look at someone like me and think that I was English, right? I got that vibe, and I can't quite put my finger on it all the time, but there was one specific incident which I think was somewhat typical of it, which was we had played Portugal in a tournament, and I think Beckham had missed a penalty, and it was basically this penalty that went really high. I don't know if you remember this, yeah. And we were in, I want to watch that in the pub with some of my friends, and the friends were all South Asian, and we were England, we were supporting England, like we wanted England to win. And then we came outside of the pub, and we were just, really annoyed, but then like laughing at Beckham's penalty, because we were just like, what an idiot, can't believe whatever. Like, and we were like, kind of replicating how he kicked it, like whatever. And there were some like bunch of guys who like came out of this pub and basically just accused us of being Portuguese fans, right? And refused to believe us that we were English fans. Yeah, like England fans. And basically like tried to start a fight on us, which didn't end in anything. But I remember that was again this point of, do you know what? Like, you've maybe it's because of the way we were behaving with that penalty, like, and maybe that was genuinely a misunderstanding, maybe. But there was that element where I was like, like, to many of you, I'm never going to be English. Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about supporting this cause, team, whatever, where many of you don't want me there, or don't feel that I have the right to. And I think unconsciously it made me separate somewhat from the England team, and it's only actually over the last maybe kind of 4 or 5 years that I've got that interest back a little bit. And I think it's perhaps for people, because of people like Saka, who I love so much as an Arsenal fan, and just want him to do so well, that I support England partly. Like that sort of catalyzed it.
Yeah,
But then,
that's where I resonate with in terms of the player aspect as well, because I'll always be like club over country, whether it's, to be honest, Ghana or England. But I think where I see like players like Saka, who I really resonate with, even there's times when like you get people like Ainsley Maitland-Niles in the England team or whatever, it's just like, these are like genuine like Arsenal players that I'm going to like love and like. So when you go on international duty, I want you to succeed. So if you succeed means England going far in tournaments, then yeah, like absolutely, like go and do your things. So I think it's like it resonates from both a club affiliation, but also like from a like fellow like black player kind of affiliation as well, to want them to do well for the country. And the bank holiday, we are overdue when finally gets one. I don't know what Thomas Tuchel has in his plans, but yeah, I think we've been long overdue one of those. So
that'll be super interesting to see how that goes.
And just, I guess, speaking of even like winning tournaments and I guess football in general, I guess kind of last part of this podcast, I think it would be, criminal for us not to speak about your subject matter expertise, which is the good old Arsenal, and I guess kind of where we are at the moment, and I guess your general thoughts of just at the moment, sort of recording that still fairly early on in the 24-25 season, but I guess your current thoughts on Arsenal. Of course, as you mentioned, we just come off a 2-0 loss to Bournemouth, first defeat of the season. Yeah, just what your still hopes are for the season, and just what your current head is at when it comes to Arsenal.
It's just a terrible time to ask. Like as we said before we started recording, geez, Man United, Spurs won from being behind. Man City have won in the last kick of the game or whatever it was. I haven't even seen it. I said 97 minute. VAR, is it going to just allow it? No, it's not.
Yeah.
All of that. And then we've lost as well with another red card and another like big drama. So, I feel, I don't know, it's not the best time, but look, trying to be reflective. First thing I'd say is like the journey that Arsenal have been on over the last few years. Like, I'm just so delighted, and I love everything that the club are doing. And I think Mikel Arteta is doing an amazing job and everything. And I love him to bits. I think I intentionally said that to almost make sure that
you get the good parts.
The foundation was there, because I don't want to sound like I'm great, but I'm like I just feel really tired this weekend, to be honest, like with it, because I feel like I don't know if we're overcomplicating things a little bit, and I would never question. I'm not saying that I understand tactics better and all the rest of it, but like when you go back 2 years ago, and that was the kind of the first season where we finished second, we were playing this really kind of interesting brand of football with some very basic fundamentals, and I remember us being really good at suffocating opposition or whatever, and clearly, like when we went into last season, there were things that Arteta wanted to evolve us into to make us better, overall, so we can get over that line. And there was a bit of teething at the beginning, like whatever, clearly we were like phenomenal for the second half of the season. So then you sort of thought in my mind, right, all right, well, it's annoying that we had that teething at the beginning, because clearly like the potential of the team is huge, and look how we won all those games. The reason why I feel a bit tired is I feel like, he's now tweaked it again to try and make us even better. But we're going through the teething, right? Yeah. So I can see it, and I have faith. I understand it. I get it. Like, I get that there is like, I'm great or good. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, is it a bit of a gamble to sort of think that, all right, so every season we're going to like make it that little bit more sophisticated. And I think that we're at that point where you don't get to drop many points, right? You're just not allowed to drop many points. So how long can you teeth? And I think whatever it is, like clearly, we've been getting some decent results this season. But I think clearly there's something that's not quite there, and maybe it's because Odegaard got injured. Maybe there's lots. I was
going to say injuries. I think more than most seasons. Have not been the reason like for our killer, but that's been a noticeable difference, I think, for myself.
Yeah. And what do you make about the red card, like pandemic,
Right.
like, I
Pandemic
mean,
is a good word. Yeah.
3-8, mate.
3 and 8
Like
games, yeah. It's yeah, I think I've I'm in various Arsenal group chats and football group chats, and like I've got friends being like, yeah, we're referee different to other teams, which I'm not massively against, because I do see that in a lot of it's like very much like if something is like red card for the first time, normally Arsenal are the ones that are attached to it. It's not like, yeah, it
yeah,
rarely happens to any other team. It's like, yeah, the Martinelli 2 yellow cards in like 30 seconds.
so
That
true.
Declan
So
Rice
true.
has been the first one to start off this time wasting
We're
thing.
always the pilot. We're always the pilot.
Pilot is that's the word. So it's kind of like, okay, well, we're waiting for the consistency. But I do think, yeah, there's an element of like, okay, referees only have an impact on a game that you let them ultimately. So if you like, if you don't bury your chances, or if you give them a reason to, book you or send you off, like Saliba did, for example, or like Trossard did in the Man City one, it's like, yeah, you're putting yourself in the firing line, and there should be a knowledge now that of where Arsenal are in terms of like with the media and everything. Arteta last season getting booked for blowing his nose, and just do it, like not actually blowing his nose, but you can't do anything without getting booked. You know what I mean? So I think there has to be an element of know-how in the squad to be like, we are this kind of team, or we're perceived to be this kind of team. So let's not try and give the referee opportunities to do this. And yeah, I think it's just, especially when it's so blatant with like red cards, where it's literally just just chopping one arm off the team in like these vital games like City, Brighton, and Bournemouth, and the results are impacting as a result. So I think that's where we've got to maybe try and be a bit more, ironically, a bit more clever in a different way, because we've been trying to be clever, and all the dark arts and cleverness has just got us like dropping 7 points or whatever it is. So
yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I also think that your point about us being ref differently, I honestly, I'm sure I know that all clubs fans think that there must be agendas against them. I don't think necessarily there's an agenda against us, but I think there's some actually quite logical things that you can probably point to, which are that things like, I'm sure that the referees, the PGMOL, are really aware of the problem it causes them when successful teams have a successful manager who feels that they can exert their influence over referees. So like if we go back to sort of Fergie days, they become, this big stature, this big personality who is able to almost kind of cause a lot of anxiety in referees through their press conferences, through what they say. And Jose was good at it. And now in our recent era, you have people like Pep and Jurgen Klopp who on the face of it, absolute gentlemen, but actually like have been really, really effective in causing a lot of anxiety in referees, and some of the things that they say, really coming down on bad decisions. And I think they see it with Arteta, and I think they're like, no, not another one. Right. So I don't know if there's this kind of reaction to basically try and put Arteta back in his box before he gets, kind of too big
that
for his
level,
boots.
yeah.
That level. And, again, maybe that's like a pilot. I don't know. And sometimes these things aren't even completely conscious. It's not necessarily saying they're completely coordinated. But I don't feel like Arteta is liked that much by PGMOL. And I think, I think it does show sometimes. And, when you look at the decision yesterday, and then you look at this decision that was in the Liverpool Chelsea game, right? Which you can come up with all these reasons why it's a bit different. Oh, like that was like 3 yards different, and actually there was that player who was also there, and he probably was going to get there. And like guys, like come on, right? So
it's when you start splitting hairs. Like, I think I'll still not be able to get over the Declan Rice one, because I just think like that was a level of like ludicrousy that was like
ridiculous.
He's literally, like if we start talking about that, we'll be here till Kingdom Come. But I think but that's where it's like, that's why I didn't mention Declan Rice earlier, because I was like, that one just generally felt like it was like ridiculous refereeing, whereas like Trossard is the one where it's like, referee doesn't have to send him off, but you equally given him a reason to, do you know what I mean? So that's where, if you just don't give him the reason, then he can't book you because you haven't booted the ball 50 yards or whatever. There's a bit of a kind of, to and fro kind of thing. So yeah, a lot still to play for. And just hoping that we can I mean, I was going to say we're hoping we can turn things around, but it's still in the top four. Like it's not, one loss just makes you think like, yeah, the whole world is
I know.
it's going to collapse. But
It shows how far we've come, right?
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
you lose and it's doomsday. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, beat Liverpool next week, and yeah, all roads lead back to the title. Speaking of the title, I wanted to kind of start wrapping up our Arsenal chat by asking you your general hopes and I guess aspirations / predictions for this season. Like generally, like what do you think we can achieve or do?
Honestly, if Man City had just drawn today, I think my answer would have been a little bit different. But I don't think we'll win the league. I think Man City have still got that ability to just turn it on when they need to. I think they've got their own problems, don't get me wrong, but I think that if we weren't teething, if we were just continuing the same as we were doing at the back end of last season, I think I'd probably be saying that, I think we're gonna win the league. But I don't think we will win the league. I think we'll finish second. I do think we'll win a trophy. I think that Arteta's doing a really interesting job of rotating his squad. Clearly, I think with longevity in mind, I feel. And maybe look, to a certain extent he has to because we've got a couple of injuries anyway. But I think that he's assembled a squad where he can rotate now. Even in defense, he can do some different things. So, and so I think that might help keeping players fit. The anxiety I have about making any kind of commitment on anything with regards to the Champions League is I'm still trying to get my head around the format, right? I'm still trying to get around when I'm supposed to get into this.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, like, so that for that reason, I feel like, I don't really want to go out and say, yeah, I think we can win the Champions League. But at the same time, I think we've got a good chance. I think we've got a good chance as anyone of winning the Champions League, to be honest, because of just how tactically good we are and robust defensively. So yeah, look, I'd say, look, my ambition is that we win at least one of the big two titles. I don't think we'll win the league. I think we've got better chance of winning the Champions League. And I think if we don't win one of those two things, I can certainly see us winning one of the FA or Carabao, probably the FA.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm not too far in terms of like your line of predictions. I think even before this weekend, I just got this thing in my head, like Pep is just, I always say it, that these words come out of my mouth probably at least every couple of weeks. Like Pep is just fake. Like he's not a real, like he can't be, because he's just that good. And Man City are equally as fake as what Pep Guardiola is, and they just like they proved this weekend, they'll just find a result out somewhere. Like all of a sudden, the two major last minute goals that they've got this season, both coming from John Stones, like Haaland's.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're both coming from
exactly.
Like Haaland or De Bruyne or whatever. They're both coming from John Stones, but then you'll still get next week Haaland scoring a random hat trick because he's still Haaland. And then De Bruyne hasn't really even been playing yet, but he'll have a 5-10 game. Do you know what I mean? So Man City are just Vardyol's just scoring goals, top bins. It's silly. Like it's
ridiculous.
So I think as much as I would love us to win the league, I just can't envisage it in my mind unless a lot of things change this season. Like as you mentioned with us teething, I think we've like second half of the season we were doing this and we had to do what Liverpool did, which is just carry on doing this for the next 30 games, and then Man City will slip up a couple of times and be like, oh my gosh, like this team is actually probably going to win the league now, and then it kind of happens. But you can't afford to do that. Like Liverpool just kept doing this. That was actually what got them the league, because I think they probably even realized that when we draw a couple of games, City will know that you just have to keep going up, and we kind of haven't done that. So again, unless we turn that around in the next maybe 4 or 5 games, then I think it's going to be difficult for us. I've been screaming that we need to win a cup for a little bit, and I have this thing, like personally, where I'm like, what? Like, why don't we win the Carabao Cup? Like, I've never seen us win the Carabao Cup in my lifetime. So that tells you everything you need to know. And not because I value the Carabao Cup, but I'm just like, it's a trophy, and it's one of the big 4 trophies, and it's not easy competition to win, but it's the easiest out of all of them. But I'm just like, why have we never just done it? Like, just do it, just so no one has to talk about it. Like, we've done FA Cups, so we kind of know what that feels like. And not to sniff at the FA Cup, if we won it again this year, like great and amazing. But I'm like, win the Carabao Cup and it changes the whole dynamic of the season. You've got 3 more months to push for the league. Like you don't know like what it could do for you. So yeah, my personal thing,
Yeah.
is if we could win, talk to me again in February, if we could have won the Carabao Cup and still be in the title race, I would take that, because then we've got a trophy in the bank. We'll probably end up finishing like minimum second, and I'll take that as like a fairly decent season at that point. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes me less ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes you realistic, I think, mate, to be
Yes.
honest. It really does. Like you say, like City are this, it's almost like it's not real. Like your John Stones point was a really good one, right? Like I mean, it's not even just like a centre back getting him out of jail. There's a centre back who doesn't even really start anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? He's kind of 2 games he scored these vital, like, come on, man. Like you said, in Guardiola, turns into this like incredibly attackingly proficient fullback out of nowhere. Like, yeah, man, like you're totally right. And so I don't know. The best that we can maybe hope for is that the court case goes the way everyone really wants it to go. But yeah, I mean, mate, like, and your point on the Carabao, even for an oldie like me, like, I think I was little when we won what was
The
called,
Worthington
I think
Cup?
I think it was Coca-Cola Cup at the time,
Coca-Cola,
actually.
yeah.
I think it was pre that. And I think, if I remember correctly, Steve Morrow scored, I think.
I remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he scored the winner. In my head, it's either him or Andy Linnigan, but I think it is. I think it is Steve Morrow, actually. So yeah, it's been a hell of a long time. And when Man United, kind of in the sort of latter sort of Fergie years, they always used to kind of win it, and City would always win it in this kind of sort of Pep era. And I think that there's something in that, right? There's that kind of, it's still a trophy. It's still like a winning mentality and culture. So you shouldn't be like sniffed at, right? But
Yeah.
And the problem is when you come to managing your squad, right? And it's just that probably comes into it, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so hopefully we'll be at a trophy parade in May of some sorts.
Yeah,
for the big two, like you say, but yeah, we shall see. Just to round off with a bit of nostalgia, I guess. So I guess as an Arsenal fan, I want to know the best game you've been to, especially as a kind of privileged season ticket holder, the best game you've been to live in the flesh.
Well, I'm really fortunate to have been at the Bournemouth game, which not this bloody Bournemouth game just now,
Reece
but
Nelson,
like,
we know.
yeah. And I sit in the North Bank lower, and if you imagine like where I sit in the 7th row in block 9, basically from where Reece Nelson hit the shot to the ball going in, if the ball had just carried on going in a straight line, it basically hits me in the face. Yeah. So if you imagine the view that I had there, right, it was just like, this crowd of players, and suddenly bang, you see this ball just coming, and like, hang on a minute. Like, it's like, so that moment, it was just, just out of this world, right? So it's hard for me to look past that. The only thing that compares is when we beat Leicester City 2-1 back in the season where we didn't go on to win the league. So maybe there's a similarity there in there. But like, yeah, we that feeling, that sort of last sort of touch of the game, that, right? It's really hard for me to think past those two in terms of like in the flesh, because the only other sort of games are the countless kind of times we've beaten Tottenham, and they've generally been these kind of really fun games where someone gets sent off, maybe like we concede a couple, and then like there's there's some crazy comeback. So those have been good, but I'll just, for the sake of making a decision, I'll go with the Bournemouth game because of just the recency of it all. And favorite game overall, like the one that comes into my head is when we beat Barcelona at home. And I think it was just because we were so used to not beating these big, do you know what I mean? And it was always this whole thing of Arsenal play great football, brilliant, but when you play against a really big team, it's not going to work, is it? And I think it was just that, again, you had the mighty Barcelona with all their top players, and we go a goal down, and it's like, all right, here we go. Right. But then it was just, the comeback, the Wilshire's performance and all of that.
Fabregas against his old team and all,
yeah, all that, like, and it's just that, even when I think about the winning goal, the Arshavin goal, it's just like, I remember, and this is something which, again, sort of going back to Arteta and the overcomplicating again, I feel like it feels so out of order even criticizing him, but when we were drawing Barcelona in that game, right, when it was 1-1, I don't like, I wouldn't be able to name you all the individual players, but I remember we basically had every striker in the squad out on the pitch
Yeah,
at one
Bednar,
point.
all of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were all there. And like it's 1-1 against Barcelona, right? Like, so he's gone like, nah, do you know what? I'm gonna win this game, right? And he's just put them all on, and that was fun, right? That was like, look, it's easy to like look back on it and really fondly, because at the end of the day, we used to routinely just lose big games and didn't really win trophies around that time. So whatever, but that was, I think, just a good moment of when it is fun and when you are kind of just throwing a caution to the wind. And that second goal was just this really cool, like, counter and like the space created and like, then the ball falling and like to Arseholic and just that beautiful, sweet shot that goes in. Is just, yeah, just brilliant. Like, so I'd probably say, outside of the games I was privileged enough to be at, which I said, like that one is probably mine. What about you, actually? So what are your favorites?
yeah. I can resonate with all of them games, and like, I think I mentioned before, like my football nostalgia is quite good, but especially when it comes to Arsenal. So yeah, all of those games is one of them. I remember where I was. So I wasn't in the ground for Bournemouth or Barcelona, but I remember where I was, and then I was the Leicester game. I definitely wasn't in the ground because I was at university in Nottingham, but I categorize that game as the doing knee slides in my kitchen game. Yeah, that's literally what I was doing. And like, I've got other uni friends who were doing the same thing in their apartments or their houses, and we were just like running out into the street going mental. And it was just, Danny Welbeck. Yeah, I'm grateful, even though we didn't do what we were supposed to do that season. But yeah, for that moment, yeah, it was mad. Myself, so in the flesh, it is one of the Tottenham games. It was the first 5-2. The one that I'm pretty sure we were like 10, 11 points behind the top 4 race. This was the do or die game. Like, basically, if we didn't win that game, we're not getting top 4 for the first time in however long. They go 2-0 up. Adebayor scores as well. And it's just like 2-0 down, 20 minutes. Adebayor scored. Like, this is just turning into the worst derby ever. And then
that's the one does he get sent off in that game? Was that the one where he gets sent off?
No, he gets sent off the year after. He just
the next one, right?
Doesn't really do anything in that game. They're wearing white. That's how I differentiate. So the first one they wear white. The other one they wear this weird black and grey whatever kit.
Okay.
But yeah, so 2-0 up. And then Sanga gets one back, and I'm sitting behind the Sanga goal. That's the one where it's like, firstly, he doesn't really score. Secondly, he's done this powerful header, like from
a really good header with it. Yeah.
And then Van Persie with the equaliser. That goal, like, honestly, and I'm sat behind it as well because I'm in clock end, and just he just sets it out, and you just know, like,
he had his back and he turns, doesn't he? And he whips it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then that goal, that was a top touch, like, for just absolute stampede. Every single goal after the Van Persie goal, I was in probably row like 15, and I ended up in row 1. But every single
nice,
goal,
yeah.
Literally, everyone was just like, I've never felt like just so out of body in my like football experience. And then it was like Rosicky, and then Walcott's got another one. It was just like literally just goal after goal after goal. You're thinking,
yes, okay, I remember the one now.
What is going on? Like, this is
because Walcott scores 2 almost identical goals in like a couple of minutes, doesn't he?
Like,
yeah, right. Yeah, that was quality. Yeah. That was a great game.
That one was quality. And I think my overall kind of favorite game, well, not even overall, but like, I guess non in the stadium favorite game was the Arseholic 4-4 at Anfield, just because, again, to categorize, like, I was watching at home, but I think I was by myself actually, but I think I just couldn't compute like what he was doing. Is like, he's got another one and he's got another one, but then Liverpool are coming back, but then he goes and scores. It's just the back and forth, and I was like, when he scored the 4th goal, I was like screaming in my house, like, he scored 4 goals at Anfield, like, and we're winning 4. Like, I just couldn't compute what was going on in that game. Like, it was class at the same time. And then, typical Arsenal fashion, we couldn't hold on to the lead, still get paired back 4-4, even though we should have won. Him scoring 4 goals at Anfield, but I just those times when I go mental, like at home, like genuinely, because I'm not always someone who I control my emotions a lot of the time, but if Arsenal are the only thing that can just make the lid fly off and make me go into somewhere that I don't normally go, but yeah, those ones I remember. So
great moments,
Danny Welbeck, you're Andre Arshavins. I got Arshavin on my back the next season as well on the new kit. That's how much that game like meant to me, because what a player, what a celebration.
Wow. Oh god, those are good memories. Jeez.
I know, simpler times before all this 3 red cards in 8 games nonsense. But anyway,
I know. And now Liverpool this coming weekend as well, right? So I wonder if someone will score 4 goals in. Like I doubt it, but
Raheem
yeah.
Sterling, step up.
Can you imagine? Jeez.
And one goal for Raheem would actually be nice. But anyway, we shall see. But
I think we'll win on the weekend. By the way, and that's because I feel like we've actually been quite good over the last couple of years of responding to stuff like this Bournemouth game. Like we very rarely have 2 bad results back to back, and I feel like Arteta will have done a decent job of going, well, look, you've lost, everyone else just won, and what are you gonna do about it? Because you can't drop points again.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do? I think he's quite good at that sort of team talk.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So
yeah, that bounce back. I think to be fair, even under Wenger, we'd have, especially with certain big games, you're come on, it's Arsenal. We can't there's certain times where we can slip up, but it gets to the point where it's come on, guys. When Smith Rowe done the whole Chelsea game, when it's we're literally on our knees here, we can't get any further than rock bottom, and it's okay, Arsenal do pull a result out of the bag, and I think us being good against the top 6 teams in the last couple of years as well, being at home, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a result. The Saliba suspension is maybe the only thing that might hamper us in that, but I think we should still maybe have enough in the squad to cope. So yeah,
I think so. Unless they appeal that, right? Because based on what happened in this Liverpool Chelsea game, right? If they turn around immediately and go, well, hang on a minute, right? You've just given this as a yellow, right? And they're pointing at 2 very similar incidents. Because if it wasn't for that, I don't think they'd have any chance of getting it overturned. I wonder if it's they have a chance. But anyway, no. But otherwise, let's assume that he's not going to be fit. And yeah, it'll be interesting, mate. Yeah. But anyway, Shakhtar first, right?
That's I'll be there as well, actually. So I might even see if we can grab a drink. Thank you, Raj. Just for your time, your ears, your efforts. Dealing with a couple of technical issues and stuff as well. But it's been a long time coming. It's been the collaboration that I've been wanting to do for a number of, probably even been a couple of years now as well. So thank you for your time, for your ears. I'm sure the listeners and supporters have enjoyed listening to your tones as well, and seeing you as well when we release the visuals. So just a massive thank you.
That's so kind. And again, just thanks for having me. It's honestly a fantastic privilege. And also because, we've got this pause on our own podcast, this was nice getting a fix of being able to talk football. So I really appreciate it, mate. And honestly, all the great work that you do to raise awareness and just explore some of these issues that we've talked about, even in a really fun way, in a light way. It's still really cool. Do you know what I mean? And I think, I've learned a lot even in this conversation. I think it's been really interesting hearing your perspectives. So and almost like therapy, being able to reflect on my own a little bit, so no, I appreciate it. Look, thank you. And I really appreciate anyone who does listen to this and enjoys it. So cheers. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. And just a reminder to everyone to to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and follow us on your audio listening platforms. I also post the links to the Arseholics YouTube pages, and also Raj and the other guys, their socials as well, if you want to check them out, especially with some of the content that they put out, and just if you fancy a chat with some sane gooners, because a lot of gooners are also not not the most sane, including probably ourselves at times. But it's always good to kind of build up the community, and just continue supporting good people with good intentions and good hearts. So thank you once again, Raj, and we'll see you all very, very soon.
#BTHPOD.